Hi and welcome back to Urbcast, my podcast about architecture, urbanism, cities, urban development, and other things as well. First of all, it's so good to be back after almost 1.5 months break. The last episode I published in English was somewhere in December. Then I went for a break, I went for some holidays, and also I was thinking, how can I make and create this podcast in a more sustainable way as an author, as a creator. And that's why this episode is being released so late, only in February. And this reflects my idea about the podcast and how to move forward. So basically, there will be less episodes. I will focus a bit more on the quality as well as on the written content. There will be article summaries of each of the episodes. There will be the back of the Urbcast newsletter, the Urb letter, as I called it. And unfortunately, last year I didn't have time to publish any of those. Especially, the newsletter was on hold. And I realized that this year I want this podcast to be something more than just a podcast, more of a hub for urbanism, for urban development, architecture, and similar topics. So that's why there will be less episodes, but the topics will be explored a bit more in different ways, and also with higher quality, I hope. So thanks a lot for following Urbcast so far. We are starting season number 7, which sounds crazy, to be honest. It's been almost 6 years of me developing this podcast, and I'm looking forward to many more years of creating it. So if you like this episode, please let me know what you think. Share it with someone that might also like it. And without further ado, welcome to the newest solo episode on the urbanist perception and 5 lessons from Vietnam and Vietnamese cities. Vietnam is a beautiful country, and I would say that recently more and more people plan to go to Vietnam. I was one of these people, and I've spent almost 3 weeks in December in Vietnam. But this episode is not a travel guide episode. I just want to share some urban lessons from Vietnam, seen through the eyes of myself as an urbanist. So I'm sharing 5 urban lessons and 1 bonus observation at the end. Because being in Vietnam, especially in the huge Vietnamese cities, seriously challenges how I think about cities and planning and everyday urban life. And I think it's just so great from time to time to get out of your shell and your comfort zone and visit places like that, which might seem a bit different, crazy or strange from a European perspective, but that's something that definitely is extremely enriching. So lesson 1 is that the street in the city is the living room. And I think that this is one of the most important parts of Vietnam and being in Vietnam and the Vietnamese cities, that the street is everything. It's where people cook, it's where they eat, work, fix scooters, meet friends, they rest, and they do it all at the same time. And from a European perspective, someone that lives in Copenhagen, where half of the year you have almost no life on the streets because it's dark and cold and people prefer to sit indoors. This looks overwhelming because in the Vietnamese cities, the huge ones like Saigon or Hanoi, there are no clear sidewalks. Scooters are everywhere, and they are those small plastic chairs placed randomly everywhere. So it looks like chaos, but after a couple of days, you realize that this is not an absence of rules. It's more the system of different rules, because this urban life is widely about, eye contact, intuition, reading the movement of others, especially in the traffic, and also adjusting your pace. So being outside in the cities on the street is not about dominating the space, but negotiation. And I think this is probably the most intense version of a mixed-use city that I've ever experienced. Not mixed through like a zoning plan, but mixed-use city in terms of social agreement that was developed over the years, over the decades, actually. I felt like people don't ask if something is allowed; they just do it and they check if it works. And if it does work, it does happen. Lesson number 2 is about the scooter, the moped, as the complete backbone of the transport system. So we are talking about mobility here. And in Vietnam, a scooter it's not just a vehicle. It's the whole transport system. And I think what is really crazy is that there are more than 70 million scooters and motorcycles in this country of around 100 million people. So it's 7 out of 10 people own a scooter. And in cities like Ho Chi Minh or Saigon or Hanoi, scooters are everywhere, literally everywhere. The scooters replace the car. They enable work. They enable carrying goods. They transport the whole families. The record I've seen was 4 people on one small scooter. But it also becomes a place to take a nap during the break. I've also seen some people just parking the scooter and lying down on it and sleeping, taking a nap. This is extremely important for the transportation system and for the whole functioning of the cities there. And traffic looks chaotic. It looks terrifying from outside, especially if you're a pedestrian at first and it's like extremely hard to cross the street. But once you are in the system, once you are on a scooter yourself, although I'm not recommending renting one in the city, but you can order Grab taxi on a scooter and then you are just being carried by someone. Then you're becoming part of it. And when you see it from the first person, you can realize that this is actually working. This is a system. There is this flow instead of hierarchy, and there is communication instead of regulation. So the trust is being shown in form of different signs. And the horn, this is very important. The horn is not aggression. The horn is information. So if there are 2 beeps, it means I'm close. If there are 3 beeps, it means I'm very close or I'm overtaking. And this system really works. But one note to that is that it comes with a huge cost because there is enormous air pollution in the cities in Vietnam. There is huge noise. There is smog, sometimes even outside the cities, because the mopeds are like 99% of them. I don't know how many, honestly, but the vast majority, they are not electric ones. And the fumes that come out of the scooters, they're basically everywhere. So I feel like as much as this is extremely convenient and efficient mode of transportation for this context, there is a real environmental price for this kind of bottom-up mobility. Lesson 3 is about the religion that technically doesn't exist, but yet is everywhere. And how can religion enrich and also shape the urban environment? Because Vietnam is officially a secular state. Most people declare no religious affiliation. And yet, religion is impossible to miss because you can see it everywhere. You can see ancestors' altars in homes and shops. You can see Buddha figures everywhere. You can also stumble upon small shrines for luck and prosperity. There are a lot of different amulets on scooter dashboards or car dashboards. But this isn't about like loud religion. This is not institutional. It's not political. It's more like everyday religion. This is, I would call, the soft layer of the city. You can walk through a dense urban neighborhood and suddenly just enter a tiny shrine where there is a multi-hour ceremony happening, also like without the clear boundary who can attend, who cannot. Yeah, there's basically no boundary between the sacred and profane. No fence, no sign, no separation, just another soft, as I like to call it, soft layer of the city. If you happen to be in Vietnam, just try to find those religious signs everywhere and just try to think how do they influence your perception of the cities. Lesson 4 is about cities that are designed by time and not just space. What I mean here is that I found Vietnamese cities being very temporal. So the day starts early, very early. And by very early, I mean that one day when I went to see the sunrise around 5:30, the beach was already maybe not packed, but there were already some people at the beach doing the morning Tai Chi. The lifeguard was already working. People were taking walks. People were bathing in the sea. And that was 5:30 a.m. It wasn't even sunny. It was before the sunrise. So people do spend the early morning on exercising in parks. Markets start to be active as well. Food is being prepared. All different deliveries are happening. People start to prepare coffees. I realized that the cities in Vietnam, like Hanoi or Saigon, wake up hours before most of our European cities. But I think that one of the most important, interesting things to me in this was how the same street transforms throughout the day. And how can it be completely different in the morning, afternoon, evening, or at night? There was one day I was walking back home about 2 a.m. and I was actually walking through a street that I've been at the previous day and the same day during the day, and I didn't recognize it. It looked completely different. So here, I think the lesson is that a city is not just buildings and infrastructure. Is this, yeah, as Jan Gehl says, like the life between buildings, but also the rhythm, the timing, and the repetition, and how you can own the part of the street for some part of the day, and then you kind of negotiate with another owner who comes after, and this is changing all the time. So I would say that this is the livability of the city throughout the day, throughout the night as well. This is something that really interests me. Last year, I actually co-produced a podcast series at Urbcast about the nighttime governance together with Andreina Seijas. I will add a link into the description because this is where we explored how cities do govern their nighttime and how maybe Vietnam doesn't have like a nighttime policy, but the night is definitely happening. And this is just, well, amazing thing to experience. Lesson 5 is about city and the countryside working as one connected system. So although normally when I'm traveling, I love to visit cities. I love to walk in the cities. I love to experience the cities. So quite often I would prefer to stay longer in the city before I go to nature. But this time it was a bit different. I got quite tired by the cities, by the pollution, by the noise. That was actually the countryside where I really fell in love with Vietnam. And I understood how, first of all, how the Vietnamese village is working, but also how it is deeply connected to the city and how a village or a smaller town works as this one interconnected ecosystem. While visiting one of the small towns, we went on a tour and we visited someone growing rice, someone making noodles, a family growing bean sprouts for generations, someone selling soup or someone repairing scooters. And you can see how everyone depends on everyone else. So families making the noodles and making the bean sprouts, they obviously then sell it to the soup maker. And this is actually a very amazing experience to be in those different places, visit those different vendors and makers, and then seeing all of the things they produce to connect on one plate in one place. well, I know that this is how world works, that all different things connect in another place, especially in restaurants. But that was just like very, very nice, very enriching to see the whole process behind, making a simple soup. It actually requires 5 different people to produce their own goods for you to be able to eat the pho soup somewhere on the street food. So this resilience, but also codependence, is something that really, really helped me understand the cities there, and how, especially the small towns, the small cities, the villages, they embody the 15-minute city without branding themselves as 15-minute city. They are maybe not having plans and documents and all the presentations about 5-minute city, but this is how it should work, like that, how people work together, how people limit the distances, maybe by using the scooter, but still, it all works as a one codependent organism. So definitely, if you plan to visit Vietnam, I would totally recommend visiting not only cities, but stay at the countryside as much as possible. And there is also one bonus point, because maybe you have realized that I haven't mentioned communism or the war in Vietnam. And I think this is something that also deserves to be mentioned, because Vietnam is still officially a socialist republic. So it means that the communist symbols are everywhere. Thousands and thousands of flags, different billboards, images of the father or the uncle of the, as the Vietnamese people call him, of the country, Ho Chi Minh. But I would say that this is actually something that was quite surprising, that for most of people, these symbols are background, are not controversy. They do represent history, but they also represent identity and community and continuity. I would just say that this is, a very interesting mix to see this communism that was there for so many decades, nowadays being integrated into this fast opened up economy. I think what's also important to add is that when you talk to especially young people, they don't feel resentment or grudge towards Americans, towards the war. They just say simply that they focus on the future, that the life quality improved tremendously over the last couple of decades. And now they are just feel as the citizens of the global world. So that's where they focus. They focus on having good education, on having good job, on traveling if they can as well. So this is different. But obviously the war was and still is having impact. This is something that I will also not talk about broadly in this episode, as this is something that, it's obviously extremely complicated topic, and I don't feel like I have even after visiting the War Museum in Saigon, I still don't have the full overview to explore this topic further here on the show. And that brings me to the last point, which is that what is also fascinating about communism aesthetics is that it is sometimes used as a design, especially in a cafe. There is this one coffee chain called Conch. The idea is that they use ideology that becomes a visual language, not a political messaging, but a visual language for the whole cafe. So the interior is, it is often dark green, looking a bit old, wooden, and you have the baristas who are having special dark green uniforms. You can see some books of Lenin lying on the tables in the cafe. So this is also a very interesting experience to have while in Vietnam. Seeing how the daily life and communism and the communism aesthetics, this is something that is basically quite intertwined. Conclusion. What Vietnam teaches us about cities is that Vietnam is definitely not an, I would say, easy country to visit. It's loud, it's chaotic, it's quite intense, but this is exactly what is valuable, because it shows that chaos can be indeed a system, that streets can be living rooms, and that the transport can emerge completely from the bottom up in form of the scooters. And cities are designed mainly by time, by outdoor activity, and not just plans. So yeah, I think it asks a very good question, like what cities really are and who are they for? And I think that this is very, very just very, very interesting proposition on how should we look at cities. If you've been to Vietnam yourself, I would love to hear your perspective, especially if you've been there longer than me. I've been there only for about 3 weeks. So I know some of you might have even lived there for some time. Please let me know what are your thoughts, if you agree or disagree with some of the things I've mentioned. I would love to hear your thoughts about that. And if you are planning a trip yourself, you will find a short practical travel PDF linked into the episode description. It's not a checklist, it's more some hints for where I would go, what would I do if I had 2 or 3 weeks in Vietnam. So please take a look if you plan to go there. Whether the next episode comes in 2 weeks or a bit later, I'm not really sure, but you will definitely hear from me again soon. So take care, and that was the newest episode of Urbcast.